All right, congratulations to all who survived to the very end of Patriots Eagles. You were rewarded with a touchdown from Nick. It's not delivery, it's De Janeiro at the end. Baron Morton, just really thrilling action Saturday night at Gillette Stadium. To break down part of that thrilling Saturday action here on a Sunday, hanging out 5 o'clock, but you know he's a committed guest. Dan Pizzuta, NFL analyst, free agent, been here many times. I hope to have you back. We just caught up very quickly off air for like 30 seconds. Things seem to be good. But I think you shared in my, I'm ready for week one. Have to go through this film.
Yeah, the preseason is an interesting place, especially now with the 3 games where teams still haven't, I guess, completely figured out a universal way they want to treat it. Like some are still using it as like the old preseason week 3 where you play the starters more, but we still haven't seen a lot of that. And then we had teams like Philly and New England yesterday where they did not care at all, especially with these joint practices now, where you get the runs with the starters, you see the starters going against the starters, and then you really have no need for them to do so in a game. And we just watch second, third, fourth string guys for about 3 hours.
Well, and then sometimes you have the head coach just announce in the press conference after, which this is the rare game that will be remembered, I think, for the quotes given afterward, the things said at the podium rather than the plays made on the field. Or Mike Vrabel in an answer about, hey, is Drake going to play on Thursday when they're in Cleveland for their preseason finale? Any of their starters, just to get a feel for the game operation, right? In and out of the huddle, looking and finding the play clock, just to knock off some rust. And instead of just saying no, or probably not, or we'll see, he starts with, well, we have the clip, I think. So let's just play it for the good people on the other end.
In the big picture, how important is it to you for Drake and some of the starters to play in the final preseason game, to field a game, or is the joint practices that you've experienced lessen the need for that?
I don't think we have a very deep team, Mike, so I think we have to make sure that we're preparing our football team and that we're doing everything that we can to keep our best players available. And if that means playing Thursday as part of preparation, then that's what we'll do. Have not made that decision yet, but I would say that that's something that I'm confident in with where we're set up currently.
Okay, so there it is. Our team's not deep. The guys that did not play, we care about more. Granted, everyone understands the nature of the preseason, right? Like, you're trying not to get guys hurt. But I feel foolish, Dan, honestly, because I was asked last week in a radio interview, like, hey, do you think Drake Maye will play against the Colts in the opener? My sense was, well, they only had one joint practice. And last year he did play in the opener. So that's my frame of reference. That's my template. Yeah, I think he will. 0 snaps against the Colts, 0 snaps against the Eagles. And again, there's stuff to learn we're about to go through, but it just goes to show you that your original point of how these teams treat the preseason, there's no universal agreement. There's not even a program understanding year to year. Last year it was, okay, let's get into the new systems. This year it's just everyone is a bubble boy. Put them off to the side and bubble wrap and just hang out until they get to fly to Seattle.
Yeah, and especially kind of like Mike Vrabel said, when you're already worried about some of the depth that you have with some guys either getting dinged up a little bit in practice and leaving some games early too, you're just trying to get through. So it's certainly interesting how some teams are approaching this. And then, yeah, it ends up with games like last night where not a lot of people of note were playing, especially after like the second drive in that game.
Yeah, just guys that the Patriots know are not going to be on the team, but they're also going to fill out a practice squad. And some of these players, as I wrote afterward, like, Marcus Bryant is not, for New England folks, Bruce Armstrong in disguise, right? But he was pushing to be their swing tackle. So when he gets injured as their third week 1 starter for the preseason, not the projected week 1 starters, but the guys who started against the Colts, the third one to go down with a serious injury after Ben Brown and Andrew Rupsich, that's a big deal. Because you are going to lean on some of these guys that are out there on the field, even if you don't know who they are yet, because who would have thought last August that Ben Brown, Cole Strange was still here, right? Like he was going to be a guy that they relied on to play more snaps than Demario Douglas did during the regular season. So anyway, these guys are getting reps. The team is finding out about itself. But Mike Vrabel already knows this is not deep, which is not quite how I would describe the CLNS Media Network, of which the Pass Interference podcast is a part, bubbly and bubblicious for the folks who thought we would skip over the silly adjective bit that we start with. there it is. But let's just do the film notes then real quick off the top. What caught your eye offensively, aside from my favorite undrafted rookie, Nick, it's not delivery, DeGennaro catching a very nice touchdown at the end?
Well, I think the one place where the Patriots are incredibly deep is wide receiver. And the Kyle Williams flash, I mean, outside of the deep touchdown that finally hit, like he was getting open all night. And just, when you have a Tommy DeVito throwing to him, it's not always going to connect, but he was getting open. I really liked how he moved, and then eventually finally hit with that big touchdown later. But he's going to be it maybe just, I've talked about this a bit where the Patriots could like hockey shift these wide receivers if they need to and don't want to have anyone on the field for more than like 60% of the snaps. That's somewhat what they did last year. And for Kyle Williams to come out and be a part of that, can potentially be part of that rotation, I think is going to be a big piece and potentially keeping everyone else healthy and not having the offense like miss a beat if, an AJ Brown or a Romeo Doubs has to come off the field.
Yeah, Kyle Williams, I keep describing him and Kayshon Boutte as these baseball hitters who, bat 220, but they're like Adam Dunn. And then when they connect, like the ball flies out, and there's value in guys that are like that. And it's part of the reason that overlap for Boutte and Kyle Williams that I think Boutte will be gone. And it could be by next weekend when there's cuts, and teams typically that's the impetus to make a trade, right? You're trying to figure out your 53-man roster. If you want to trade from someone, get them in the building before you send everybody else out, or in November at the trade deadline. And it's good to see that from Kyle, who again, he caught 2 passes on 6 targets. The first one was batted away in front of him. So there's some separation stuff. And Vrabel's spoken to intermediate routes, stuff that's just not vertical or a complement off the vertical stuff, the comebacks, the curls, etc., that he can work on. But the stuff that he's good at is very valuable. And you saw that there last night. I think for me, and this will be the first position that we break down, the running back battle is interesting and not the top 2 spots, though TreVeyon Henderson not anywhere to be seen last night, and there was no explanation for that. They'll be back in practice Monday, so by the time people listen to or watch this, we might know where TreVeyon was or what the deal is. The point is, Hassan Haskins plays the fewest amount of snaps, and I think might have done the most amount of good relative to those snaps for a guy who is a core special teamer, so started on all 4 phases. Lane Larison did convert a 4th down, didn't break a tackle as far as I saw. Jam Miller, the rookie, was holding the ball for all 5, went 5 of 5 on the plays where the Patriots were stuffed. All 5 run stuffs. Poor Jam Miller is the one jammed Miller last night. And then you're mixing it like a JaMycal Hasty. It's just different flavors of the same, like, yeah, I guess that we could do this. And then it almost becomes a preference to me because I don't think any of them popped in a way, Dan, but I like personally, and this is more a reflection of me than I think the player, the reliability or the proven nature of a Hassan Haskins, who's at least been in the league, been on special teams, and I know what I'm getting versus a second-year guy in Larison or a rookie in Jam Miller, who is just going to have some learning to do. And Larison, the last point I'll add, give up 2 pressures in pass protection, and that's going to be a key thing if those guys have to step in on 3rd down.
Yeah, and that's kind of why you're worried about who the potential 3rd back is going to be, because the Henderson's not going to be on the field as often because you're still potentially worried about what he is in pass protection. So if you are trying to fill in some of the gaps that you have, when you have the top 2 guys are probably going to play a lot. But if you need someone to step in, you probably do want a little more of a reliable, just all around piece like a Haskins would be. I think with probably just rounding out that group probably makes a little more sense just because he has a little more of that skill set in different things that you can fill in, where if you need to trust him on a 3rd down to pass protect, you probably can, and you might not be able to with some of those other guys who are competing for that role.
What'd you make of the offensive line?
It was okay, I guess. I mean, when you're going against, I would say the Eagles' second team defensive line is definitely better than the Patriots' second team offensive line. But I think you could say that about probably a lot of teams because the Eagles still have some guys who can do some stuff over on the pass rush. So I'm not super concerned about it. Obviously, if those are guys that would need to step in and be significant starters during the regular season, then again, like you said, we have some guys out, that would be the backups that you would hope would play a little more. So these potentially are the third string guys that you're hoping don't really get on the field. So I'm not super worried about what they might be, but it was okay. There was some hit or miss, which I think you can kind of expect from those type of players when they're on the field.
Yeah, I think you could look at this as one of two ways. When I'm charting all the pressures and you have upwards of 10 different guys who keep up pressure, you're like, that's not great, but you also don't have a singular or two black holes on the depth chart of just sucking at all the defensive linemen, who are going straight there and out the other end to the quarterback. So to me, look, I think it's much more important, like good on Jake Rizzi for being starter at Harvard, a backup at Florida State, and then starting for the New England Patriots in a preseason game as he was at center last night. I am giving up a sack. It'll happen. I just don't think he's going to be on the roster. So him giving up that sack is not that important to me. What is important to me is Caleb Lomu allowing 3 pressures, and he played virtually all of the game. One of those is a sack that he failed to pick up his half of a stunt over there on the left side right before halftime, and then 2 other hurries. Demetrius Crownover, who filled in for Marcus Bryant and right now would be your 4th tackle, I think had a terrible game. And he's a 6th-round pick who I don't think fell due to physical talent. Like, he's 6'8", he's long, he had some penalty issues at Texas A&M, but there's enough there. The thing is, you can see some of the reasons why he might have even slipped. It's just a matter of like playing with pad level and sometimes kind of lazy hand placement. In the first hurry that he gave up was just like someone just goes by him. And so I look at him and go, you don't want to play him. Maybe there's a stash developmental spot that you could have for Crownover, but you can't afford to do that now. And guys around him are dropping like flies. So narrowing in on the tackles, we're not going to discuss the tackles as a position of depth, scale 1 to 10, that we're concerned about like we will with the rest. But those are the 2 that I had my eye on, and we're a little disappointed because honestly, Lomu, especially for a first-round rookie, back at his normal position of left tackle where things looked more comfortable, but the results were not any more comfortable. Again, 3 pressures against backups is just, it's not what you want to see from a guy who, even if he's your swing tackle, like what would those numbers be if they were facing the Eagles starters and it was week 1 instead of week 2 of the preseason?
Yeah, that's certainly for a first-round pick is definitely tough. Would like to see a little more. I would hope that he, does get a little better. This isn't his baseline of play, but yeah, of the things that were pointed out yesterday, like that was probably the most disappointing.
Anything on defense?
Yeah, so like I know there's been a lot about like Dave Yakis and what he has and hasn't been doing. I think it was real tough, like going back and watching the defensive line in general, just because of how quickly the Eagles were getting rid of the ball. So you can like point to some of what there wasn't a lot of pressure, but when you look at like, I think I had Andy Dalton got rid of the ball in 2.46 seconds. Tanner McKee got rid of it in 2.23. You're just not really able to get a lot of pressure in those situations. So it's tough where you do want to see more. I think it was a very hard situation for them to be in to consistently bring pressure. But I think he still has some flashes. He was definitely moved out of the run game a couple of times by Markel Bell, who's I think we talked about before the draft, just a freak of nature as just one of the most gigantic human beings you've ever seen. So I don't totally blame him there. But I understand if you're still left wanting a little bit with what, Yakis could do, but I do think it's tough to really show some numbers just because of how the Eagles were playing offensively yesterday too.
Yeah. I think if you're disappointed in anything, it probably is his run defense, not because he had the 1 pressure and 19 pass rushing snaps, because that came on an unblocked snap. Like you saw the effort there. The traits come through a little bit. I think he'll have a little bit more pop when he's in better football shape. Because again, this is a guy who's only been on the field for 3 weeks of practice. Missed all of the spring. Contract-related procedure, surgery, whatever. That's just in the past now. You got to move forward. And clearly he's behind. The run defense stuff, though, or even on the second snap. And again, you might not be able to pay me enough money, Dan, to go up against Markel Bell for 1 snap where he gets to do whatever he wants within the legal limits of NFL football, and I'm on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Be a very, very big number. Whatever my life insurance payout to my 9-month-old daughter would be, it probably has to be a little more than that. But the point is, there's also just some fundamental stuff that I almost liked he was making hasty mistakes in the opener, fast mistakes, be aggressive, right? If you're going to be wrong, be really wrong, and then hopefully keep playing your way back into the play. There was a little bit of that, and then there was just also, you're a gap over almost immediately, and that opens up a wider rushing lane, or you're getting taken on by a tight end. And there was an initial double. He was on the left side when they were in 12 personnel for one particular snap. I think it was at the end of the first half, and gets moved initially, but then the one tight end left to block him, who he should be handling, given how strong he is, particularly in his upper body, should be moving that guy, and he just wasn't. So I didn't have too much on defense. I did love the second quote that Mike Vrabel gave of just like, hey, why'd you call that timeout? It was like a basketball timeout, like 2nd and 1 late in the first quarter. He was like, oh, I was watching dog shit defense, and I wanted to get something off my chest. I didn't know if I'd have a chance. They scored a touchdown anyway. But when you look at those plays, like Isaiah Ayton and Jeremiah Farms are a defensive tackle, and this is not to excuse Joshua Farmer or Eric Gregory or Leonard Taylor, who I think could really make the roster. But Ayton and Farmer were the primary culprits behind that leaky run defense, as well as some other guys at the linebacker level we'll talk about later. I'm just not as worried about that. They tightened it up the next couple of series. We're better in the second half. But other than that I didn't have too many defensive notes from this, understanding what they were working with and what they're working against.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You would like, some of the top guys to flash like a little more, but when you are kind of running out the backups of the backups, it's hard to like really fully take away and be disappointed in some of that stuff.
Okay. All right. Time to talk about more disappointment, or rather concern, some anxiety, or is this even fair of Mike Vrabel to say about his team? I don't think we're a very deep team on the other side of this break, which by now is probably brought to you by PrizePicks, America's #1 sports pick app. And look, we're going to be doing picks all season long on this show. So if you plan to listen, or you plan to pop in and then pop back out, I would suggest you play along. And you can either fade my picks, meaning go against me and probably do better, the Costanza method, or you could follow along and take our insights here to win money while you watch the Patriots or watch other games around the league. And this is how simple it is. You go to PrizePicks and then you download the app, PrizePicks. It's that simple. You will find players. You will find stats. When you pick a player, you can sometimes change the stat. For football, it could be yards, it could be sacks, it could be catches, it could be completions, whatever it is. You move it to wherever you want it to be, then go more than or less than. If it's not available, that's okay. You go to teams. They have winners. They have spreads. Sometimes there are totals, and you build a lineup of players and or straight up picks at PrizePicks, more than, less than for the player totals. The winners, of course, you know what that is. It's simple. And it's all at PrizePicks, America's #1 sports pick app. And here is the best part. As someone who has done this now for years and I'm going to watch the Red Sox tomorrow at home, as I'm home alone, I'm probably going to enjoy this and maybe win a little bit of money. If you download the app today and use code CLNS, you will get $150 instantly in lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. So download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $150 instantly in lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, America's #1 sports pick app. I always wonder if I should just do the fake account thing. Like whenever I want a free trial, Dan, I don't know if you do this, I will make another Gmail account because it takes 90 seconds and then sign up for Sports Reference. So I could do like the free stat head searches. And then a month later, I have a dumbass tax because I forgot to cancel the free trial that then billed me for $9.99. But at PrizePicks, if I could use that extra account, that's not $9.99 going out the door. That is, if I win my first line of $150, that's pretty good. Do you do that with the free trials, or am I the only insane person on this show right now?
So I will say, as a Sports Reference ambassador, I would say that the $9.99 for StatHead is very much worth it, and you should go do that. I also have a promo code if anyone would like, I think 20% off or something. But yes, I have done that. I think when ESPN wasn't on YouTube TV, was that a thing this year? Was it ESPN?
Yeah, they had. They were one of those annoying commercials that were like, "Oh, please write your cable company or tell ESPN they're being really stupid."
Yeah, I think for like a week or something, like during the football season, it had to sign up for like Fubo or something, and I think I ended up doing that.
Yeah, always worth it. Okay, so Mike Vrabel calls out the Patriots for not being a very deep team. I don't think this was a psychological game. I don't think this is a motivational tactic. I think the Mike Vrabel you've seen after the Patriots 2 preseason games so far, one where he's correcting a reporter to reinforce the fact that his kicker not missed a few, three missed field goals after the Colts game. And then last night when asked, hey, is just Drake going to play next week? pivots and goes, well, we're not a very deep team, so I'm not going to play any of those guys. We have to keep them healthy. A fair point. I think he's just being raw and he's being real. And so that's Mike Vrabel. Those are his real thoughts. And if we take them at face value, which I think we should, it's important to go, okay, if Mike Vrabel continued to sip truth serum, where would we go next and how concerned would he be? Granted, I don't think he's going to do this. So that's why we have you and I. Let's start at running back. Scale of 1 to 10, Ramondre Stevenson, Trayvon Henderson, and then a load of question marks, some of whom we've already talked about. Your level of concern for the depth of this position is what?
I think it's low. I think it's maybe a 3 or a 4.
Okay.
I think there's because I think if one of Stevenson or Henderson goes down for a extended period of time, I think the workload of the other one just kind of goes up. And so I think because you have these two guys, you probably have a little more baked in as that being the backup instead of having to rely more, which you will have to rely a little more on a running back 3. But I think you just have a little more leeway where the second guy, whoever is not hurt, probably just takes a little more of that role and is more of a, lead back that we see kind of we used to see across the league before teams went to more of committees in the backfield. So I'm a little less concerned because I do think you do have 2 starting caliber running backs where you could probably just increase the role of one of them if one goes down.
Totally reasonable point. I know last year, I think I over-indexed on the training camp that Trayvon Henderson had because we saw what the regular season was. And some of it, even as someone who cautioned, hey, I know he's God's gift to blitz pickup in college. This is the NFL. This is different. And it was. I didn't expect to see what we got, even from the team's leading rusher, because you don't want to have Adam Dunn at running back, so to speak, the way we were talking about Kyle Williams and Kayshon Boutte. They want to be more consistent up front. You can win with a back like that. But the point is, if Stevenson goes down, okay, you don't lose that explosive threat necessarily, but you lose the steadiness, things that they're trying to build around with Gilliam, and the blitz pickup is going to limit what they can do in pass protection. So bottom line, I'm going to go a 5 here because there's just not a lot of wiggle to any of these guys. So if you're not providing me with some extra yards, either after contact or missing tackles, and the blitz pickup, depending on the player, if it's Larison, if it's Jam Miller, probably not going to be trusted entirely right away if they have to play. What are you giving me aside from just a core special teamer? And it's not that that's not valuable. I just look at this and go, I'd really feel better if, I don't know. I'm trying to think of another back if Antonio Gibson was still here, right? But pre-injury, then I would feel this would be a 1 to me. This would be a strength of the team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Also, there probably could be a back of that caliber just kind of available after cuts or in this is again, you go back to the whole running back value conversation. The reason why they're not paid well, because there's so many good ones that are just kind of available. So I wouldn't be surprised if it comes down to them needing a third running back or being a little stronger in depth there, that there's someone that they could be able to grab, either after cuts or, in weeks 1 or 2 of this early in the season to bring in someone. This is probably the easiest position to kind of bring in someone who might be available who's going to be able to produce and get on the field if you need them to.
Yeah. One other thing too, that I think is encouraging here, because I talked to him about this the other day. Ramondre Stevenson finished last season appreciably stronger than he did even in year 2 and year 3 of his career, which should be as a running back, like your physical prime. And it's not because he's old now at 28, but the bell curve of production in your prime shifts further down the x-axis when you're looking at running backs versus other players, because it's just the nature of the job. How fast you can run starts to peter out a little bit earlier than offensive tackles who could play into their mid-30s and still be effective. You're just not going to get that at the running back position. He, however, I think has extended his career a little bit because he has personally invested a lot more in his recovery. That started last year. He has a full recovery room at his house, all the hyperbaric chamber stuff, everything that you could want. And that is something where he said, look, this summer, even after the quick turnaround from the Super Bowl, straight to OTAs, to minicamp, into training camp, is clearly their RB1. And that's what he is. I don't want to hear about 50-50 splits in the backfield. It's just not anything we've seen at training camp. he says he feels better now than he has at this point in any other summer. So I trust in that stuff for someone who, of course you'd love to hear that like year 3 of his career, right? But he's doing it now. And we saw it last year. And he finished strong in a way that you did not see earlier in his career.
Yeah. And I think it's something where even if there is like maybe a half step loss or something around there, I think his vision and his just understanding of what's in front of him has gotten so much better. And you can kind of visibly see that play out on the field too, where you can now get away with some things where if you're not as quick as you might have been, there still is the ability to know and see everything in front of him better than he did earlier in his career. And I think that's played a big part in him kind of stepping up his game too.
Okay, speaking of playing with craft, with vision, some veteran savvy, tight end, it is Hunter Henry and everybody else. Your level of concern for, just like Trevor Anderson, Eli Raridan was not there last night. That is Tanner Arkin, guys like CJ Dupree. The depth here, how concerning is it?
So I am taking a little issue with you throwing Eli Raridan into everyone else because okay. I'm a big fan.
Yeah,
and
right.
Obviously having Julian Hill get hurt was tough, but I'm excited to see what Raridan can do. So I'm not super concerned here either. Obviously it's going to be something where you're asking a lot of a rookie tight end, and we've seen that be a little better lately with offenses just kind of knowing how to use these guys. But I think Raridan was a better inline player than he got credit for at Notre Dame. I think he has some blocking that I think, even if it's not like the strength of what he's going to do, he's not going to be the best blocker on the team. I think he can still be useful there. And the explosiveness I think he can bring from, being in line off of some of these play action looks that I think they could use really well at a 12. So I think they have 2 good tight ends. And I think that's more than, most teams besides like the Rams have. So I'm not quite as concerned there.
So 1 to 10, where do you land?
I'm probably still at a 3, as long as like Raridan is okay and it's not, there's nothing to worry about him not being there yesterday in the game. So as long as he's healthy, I think it's a good position group to me.
So I'm a 6 here, and it's part, Hunter Henry, who I think is super trusted and deserves that, but unlike Stevenson, did not finish particularly strong at the end of last season. And Raridan, while I am coming around, not entirely to folks, I know Nate Tice is in this group. There are some others that are really high on him as like a great value pick. And I think it was a good draft pick. Don't get me wrong. His yak, or the potential here for some more yards after the catch, is really intriguing to me because some of his best plays in camp have been these shallow crosses that he catches. And he's got such a long stride that he builds up ahead of steam. And he's going to get yards that Hunter Henry cannot. And that is, again, specific plays in open space, things that are not going to be afforded to him very often, where if it's a jump ball, if it's a little stick route, if it's a quick out, flat, whatever, I still want 85 out there. But there's a way to use Raridan. The thing to me is, he had a quiet start to camp. The pads came on. He actually got better in a way that is really encouraging to me, given, again, the deeper you go into camp, more tired you are. Things are newer. It's more physical. That's not his game yet. He's a rookie tight end, blah, 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 blah. He got better, then was quiet again against the Eagles. And not just in terms of targets, which he's seen in certain situations. 2-minute is important to me. In the red zone, that's trust from your quarterback that you're going to convert in a situation where he has to convert. That's where, Tommy DeVito needs to cash in enough of those, throw the ball, and Raridan rewarded that faith. I guess I just have to see it in the regular season. Maybe that's not fair to Eli Raridan. And more importantly than him, like, a commenter correctly identified that Tanner Arkin was actually 6'4" at a quarter, 6'4.5" at his pro day. And the reason I bring that up is because in another episode, I kept calling him 6'6", because that's what he's listed at, Dan. And look, I would love to be an ambassador for Pro Football Reference as well. I owe them a lot. But I would just love to have those heights correctly there so I don't bitch about a guy being a fullback at 6'6", because that's what it is there. And it's also on the Patriots site. So I don't know who to blame for that. But my point is, I was saying he didn't show me a lot as a fullback. Okay, it's not his primary job. He'll be a blocking tight end. Even then, that's been like so-so. and he's an undrafted rookie. You make the team, you've exceeded expectations. There's just nothing behind Raritan where if he takes the time most rookie tight ends need to get going, and Henry misses a couple of games, it's just shaky. It's a lot of youth there to me.
Yeah, that's certainly fair. I do have a little more of a little more optimism for what I think Raritan's development outlook could be, because I do think he played some of these more kind of pro style sets at Notre Dame, especially like off play action. Like he was asked to block in those sets like more than, a receiving tight end would. And I do think he can at least be competent in blocking. And I think that's a big thing for a rookie tight end. And I think he does have that, kind of just first step explosiveness, like you said, can get out in some of those crossers and be a useful piece. So I think his development is not going to be as hard to see as maybe some other rookie tight ends that we've seen along the way. And even like a Colson Loveland last year just kind of came on like the second half of the season. So even if it's that, it might take a bit, but I think he has enough to be something that you can rely on, even if he has to be the one tight end out there if they're in 11 and Hunter Henry's not there. But then I also think you're gonna, Reggie Gilliam probably plays a little bit into this too. I would kind of put him in this group more than the running backs, because I think you could potentially put him closer to the line of scrimmage if you need some of those heavier sets where he's kind of going to be that second blocking tight end de facto if you need it. And that'll be more of his role. And I think you could use that more than like a third tight end if you need it there too.
It's a really good point. And I'm almost upset at myself for not thinking of Gilliam, who, by the way, I guess it's just going to take until week one where I see a 44 and I'm still going through my mind on the roster. I'm like, who the hell is 44? This has just been like backup edge defender central in Foxborough. I'm like, oh, that's the new fullback who I've talked to personally multiple times. And in the course of those conversations tells me, oh, yeah, we're going tempo. I'm the number 2 tight end. And then I'm back at fullback. And then we'll stay in the same personnel grouping, but then I'll be out wide and all these different things. So you know what? You've brought me down. I want to say a 5. I'll go 5.5 because the Gilliam point is a good one. And Raritan too. We're like, if the Patriots do see more too high looks like they expect, you need to be able to hurt teams over the middle of the field. And as much as I would love to jump feet first into Pop Douglas land again, a guy who played fewer offensive snaps than Ben Brown a year ago and was nicknamed Mr. August by an unnamed media member on the Hills we were watching training camp, because the man just kills it in 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s. That I do need to see in the regular season. And I trust that he's better and sharper in the McDaniel system. But my point is, if it's not Pop Douglas, you need someone to fill that space when the middle of the field is open in these too high looks to force defenses to adjust. Otherwise, for now, especially teams like Seattle and maybe even Pittsburgh, who they'll see in week 2, you might feel good about stopping the run against this team and sitting in those too high looks to make sure that A.J. Brown and Romeo Doubs don't hurt you downfield. Granted, maybe they do run the ball better thanks to Gilliam, and then maybe I take this from a 5.5 to a 5. I don't know, but I appreciate that you are therapizing fans who might be a little bit more anxious with the positivity right off the top, and you are not one of these Bobo beat members. You are national analyst, reasonable man, Dan Pizzuta, Dr. Dan.
I'll try to be. And another thing in there is, I think and you can probably tell me a little bit more if this is a thing, but like A.J. Brown in the middle of the field too, like actually doing some things in the slot and working more the in breakers than he did in Philadelphia. I think that's going to be big for that also. And just that the positional versatility that the Patriots have, I think just in general with all of these pass catchers, I think it's just also just going to be so much more than they had last year.
Okay. Are we now at a position group, the interior offensive line, where we need to do some deep breathing? Do we need to start some affirmations? Do we need to ground ourselves and start identifying things around us to push away the panic attacks? Scale 1 to 10, the interior offensive line, where are we at?
Yeah, it probably 6.5. It's probably like,
okay.
I don't think I'm going to go like full on panic with anything here, but it's tough where the starters are good and I'm comfortable with the starters and what they want to do. But when you have a guy like Elijah Vera Tucker, who is good, but just hasn't been on the field, I'm always going to have a little bit of concern there and want more backing him up because you just don't know if he's going to be able to stay on the field. And now the fact that throughout the preseason, kind of been worried about what the injury situation is behind him too, and what the backups are going to be at the interior. Like that is one of the positions where I do think there is a little bit of concern for the depth there.
Yeah, and I would say it's not even, again, Vera Tucker's injury history. Like Jared Wilson had a concussion and then a high ankle sprain last year, and those are not abnormal football injuries, of course. But the second concussion, we know typically takes longer to recover from. And someone who has dealt with those injuries at such an early point in his career, you can only wonder if they're likely to recur. And he's in the middle of everything, not to mention, like, there's a lot of trust there. And I know he played it in college, but center in this system, only in year 2. We'll see what it looks like. And Ben Brown, his top backup, is currently unavailable. I'm at a 7 here. And the interesting thing is a lot of this rides on a guy who I don't think he was suited up last night. He might have been. But he was suited up for the last joint practice and snapped a couple of times. And I think that was it. Greg Van Roten, who I have to tell you, Dan, I've definitely covered games where he's been there, be it preseason with the Giants or when the Patriots went down in 23. And Chad Ryland missed a field goal that more or less got them Drake Maye. I can't put a ton of faith in a guy that I know has started for the Giants, but was a street free agent, and right now is their top interior backup due to injury. And Ben Brown will come back at some point. Ben Brown didn't lose his leg against the Colts in the preseason opener, but man's going to be out for several weeks. And even then, like, okay, we're talking about Ben Brown, a guy who was on 6 practice squads or teams before he got to New England. It's a little tough knowing, okay, between Jared Wilson and Elijah Vera Tucker, one of them is going to be out. I think you just have to bank on for 4 or 5 weeks. What do you do after that? And that's the tricky part. But that's the league. Like, this is how fast it can hit the fan in the NFL.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say here is if we were having this conversation about 30, maybe 29 other teams, we'd be having the same conversation. That having, a full interior depth that you'd feel comfortable if one of your starters goes down for like a extended period of time. I don't think there's many teams in the league where you're looking at that and going, yeah, we're going to feel good about that. So as concerning as it is for, this Patriots team, it's also concerning for just about every other team in the league. So they're not, alone in wondering about what their depth is going to be if one of these starters goes down.
What is that item in the fridge? Like, do you have something at your house you're always running out of, and you just feel like, how do we never remember to grab an extra one of this? Because for me, it's almond milk, or which is just like the same milk, and somehow it's always one short, and I'm left with a dry bowl of cereal in front of me, which then I will just eat as a snack on my long drive to the stadium. But I just need, like, there's got to be something that all of us have an interior line depth issue in our house, or maybe even the fridge.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know if I can think of something right now because
you didn't prepare this.
I did not prepare for this question. No, yeah. The only thing that I need in my fridge is some like Stoke cold brew, and I buy those like 4 bottles at a time. So I am the GM who is making sure I have depth at the most key position that I have.
Okay, I was gonna say it sounds like you've got a lot of receivers in there, so you're
yeah.
We can throw the ball, but it's going to be quick. It's going to be just constant.
Fair, yeah.
Okay, nothing to sustain you up front, but I hear you. I don't know. Like, it's a good point to keep perspective on this whole thing. It's just, if you are the Patriots, like, who your starters are and their histories, that interior pressure is perhaps the most valuable defensive skill in football. And teams obviously are going to be looking to disrupt and come after Drake Maye in a way that he was able to overcome often last year. But also, it's not that there's a blueprint. I don't know. I just, given their injuries and given who the starters are, I think it's something that is more top of mind for them than even most teams who feel questionable about their depth, but be like, we'll probably get 17, 16 games out of so-and-so. The Patriots just can't say that right now. Let's go to defense on the edge. This is a position mostly due to weird rookie contract stuff with Akis and Harold Landry. I think it's gotten worse this summer in terms of your outlook, because I talked about this with Doug Kai before camp. I was like, I'm not going to worry about Harold Landry until like the Colts joint practice. If he's not there the next practice, he could play week 1. He was not there for the Colts joint practice. He was not there for either of the Eagles joint practices. It's 2.5 weeks until the opener. The man has not been in pads. He's not practiced at all, I don't think, since the Super Bowl. That leaves Draymond Jones, Gabe Atkins, who we just talked about, is a relative disappointment, who understanding is working through some things, and Elijah Ponder. I don't think there's another rosterable edge on this team. I'm at an 8.5.
Yeah, I'd probably say about the 7. The edge depth is definitely concerning. I think schematic wise, and this is kind of one of the things that was interesting about them last year, and I kind of wonder what it's like has been like in training camp, because I remember when I wrote the Patriots chapter for the FTN Almanac this year, though the thing that stood out to me is just how much this defense changed, just kind of throughout the different sections of the year, where they were not very blitz heavy in the first part of the season. Then they leaned into it a little more after their bye. And then in the playoffs, they just like turned full Brian Flores. So I don't think they're going to be that again, but I do think that is something they have in their bag if they are worried about, creating a 4-man pass rush. So I do think, again, just kind of like saying with the tight ends and the running backs, where I'm concerned a little bit about who they actually have at the position if they need to get to that 3rd and 4th guy. I do think there are schematic ways around it that they can kind of insulate themselves from that issue and still be productive on defense. Because I do think having some of that blitzing and the way they were able to create pressure late in the season last year is probably something they could lean on again if they need to.
I agree. That, of course, is also dependent on their corner depth, right? Which is not on our list. And I omitted it because it gets into the Christian Gonzalez conversation, and I've made more of an effort as a sidebar, texts and calls, aside from the standard stuff, the last couple of days to pick some things up. And I will have some rumblings, if he hasn't signed yet, on Tuesday. So stay tuned for our next episode Tuesday, probably out Tuesday night. Kindle Vildor looks really good. And maybe this is a small sample thing. Maybe it's noise. I buy that he's a little bit more comfortable in the system, even though he's a high variance player at a high variance position. If Gonzalez is here and healthy, and so is Carlton Davis, and so is Marcus Jones, you're just not going to have many teams with a better top 2 and then starting nickel than that. And your 3rd corner, you'd love to feel better about. But as much as it might not be a luxury, between Vildor and Charles Woods, they can get by. So anyway, that's why we're not talking about the corners. But you need those corners to cover if you are going to blitz, as you've suggested. The other thing to me that has me worried about this is not just the names in lack of production, Harold Landry's knee, and Gabe Atkins playing catch up maybe until October. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to grant him some grace on this. Their edge setting against the run against the Colts and the Eagles, granted 2 very good run blocking offensive lines, was bad, just outright bad in the joint practices. You had multiple would-be explosive plays going around the edge. Problems are going to prop up in joint practices. Don't get me wrong. No one is running around screaming about this, but it is something you can absolutely bet the coaches have gone back into the meetings and said, we can't let this happen. And maybe they change to being more of a spill team and try to get teams intentionally more out there versus a little bit more contained. I don't know. But what I saw was not good from a group that we didn't suspect to be good, and it's largely played out that way. And Draymond Jones has kind of been fine, like a whatever player. And I don't know. Maybe they surprised. They're very high on Elijah Ponder, I can tell you that.
Yeah, and that's fair. He's one of the guys that certainly flashed last year in the limited time that he did get on the field. I do think, like, I've been a fan of Draymond Jones and what he can do, so I'm not super concerned about what that is. And this is another place where if the interior defensive line is healthy, which I know they're still wondering about Barmore and what he's been able to do. But if both of those guys are on the field together with Barmore and Williams, it makes the edge job a lot easier too. So it's just a couple of things that keep feeding into each other, where I do worry about who they actually have at edge. But I do think there are ways that they can fix it without needing that top guy to really stand out.
Yeah, it's really, almost premature to look, not premature to look ahead to Seattle, but to think about like keys to a game where we don't even have 53-man rosters for the Seahawks and Patriots yet. But I suspect when we do preview the game, setting the edge against that run game, understanding Kenneth Walker did finally break the Patriots run defense in the Super Bowl, will be a really key battleground. And maybe Draymond Jones shows up and they get this remedied in the next 2.5 weeks and it's not an issue, or they're able to, they pulled a lot of safeties who would come on and they would kind of be the force player, and that helped in run support as well as obviously generating pressure because they're blitzing. maybe it's better than I suspect, but I think that battleground, limiting explosives and also controlling the trenches is going to be a big one, setting the edge against the run game. Okay. Did you give a number for that?
I don't know if I did.
Where are you?
Yeah, I'll say probably like that 6 again.
6 again. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Inside linebacker. This is an unsexy way to end the pod because the position, look, at the height of the heights, I think elite linebacker play is some of the most fun film to study and watch, and the instincts and the clips and even your mic'd up segments from back in the day. And it's Luke Kuechly, like understanding, calling out plays, where they're going to go, et cetera, et cetera. Robert Spillane and Christian Ellis are obviously a step below that. They're good, solid players, heady players. I like Ellis more and more in coverage. I think some of the play diagnosis stuff that bothered him earlier in the year, he turned around and had a very solid second half of the season. But let's say, again, because this is a depth conversation, they're missing one of the two of them. KJ Britt, come on down, I guess, running out of plays last night against the Eagles. Chad Muma, going to plays and then missing tackles, or just running into gaps where nobody is and just gets himself blocked. Or Nnamdi Obiazor, who is their 6th-round rookie and active and had this really nice play in the corner of the end zone in the third quarter to break up a pass, playing right through the hands, textbook, teach tape stuff. They didn't let him play defense for the first 2 weeks of camp. I'm not alarmed by this. Like, okay, you're 3rd or 4th linebacker. God forbid you don't have that figured out. Britt's been better lately and was really good against the Colts in the preseason opener. This is a 6.5 for me.
Yeah, I'm probably there too, just because of the depth and how this defense did play last year, where it was a little more either, whether it was, some of those odd fronts that had just more linebackers on the field. This wasn't a team that, leaned into dime a lot either, even though they have, I think, more defensive backs. Like, I think they're going to play with at least in nickel and play with 2 linebackers on the field all the time. So if one of those guys goes down, you do need that 3rd linebacker. And that is one of those positions where you probably are playing with that 3rd or 4th linebacker a little more than some of the other positions that you'll see. So I am a little concerned about the depth. KJ Britt's been the guy who's been up and down for most of his career. I've liked Chad Muma coming out. The fact that he just wasn't able to really make anything out of some of his, play recognition and the athleticism that he kind of should have had is a little concerning. So the fact that after the first 2, and again, this is another place where a lot of teams across the league are going to feel this way, where linebacker depth is not super high especially in the ways offenses are playing now with a lot of the play action and things like that. And if you don't really have the extra, the 3rd safety either, who can, be one of those linebackers, which I'm not totally sure the Patriots would be able to lean into that with what they have in the secondary. So I do think not totally having the 3rd or 4th linebacker is a little more concerning. So yeah, I'd be around the 6.5 too.
Yeah. And look, that's whether it's defensive tackle or it's the 3rd linebacker or edge, they're going to need the 3rd guy at one of these positions to play a significant role. And I'm not talking about as a starter, but like when they go base, for example, they've shown looks that either employ, 2 outside linebackers, 2 inside linebackers, and then they would have 3 defensive tackles. So there's your 3rd tackle popping up. And I feel pretty decent about Corey Durden. Great. Yep. You're going to rotate, though, at that position like they did a year ago. Sometimes they've gone base with a 4-3 alignment, and they'll keep 1 edge, the 3 D tackles again, and then a 3rd linebacker, which was often Chad Muma, who now is, again, running himself out of plays and maybe the 53-man roster. So it's just a matter of, forget the depth. Guys get hurt. That's the NFL. When they want to match certain personnel, and I think they're going to do this more defensively this year, where last year they were just so consistently a 3 nickel corner team. And they would put back. We did a little bit of everything. You majored. I don't care where your minor was. Your major was 3 corner nickel. That's what you were on defense. If you want to do that, I mean, maybe it's Del Pettis comes up and they're playing more 3 safety nickel. And he can do that. He's a big box safety. And frankly, between Muma, maybe not Corey Durden, but certainly your 3rd edge, if you're going to play that, I'd feel better about Pettis maybe being in the box than any of these guys. And I'd give KJ Britt a little bit more benefit of the doubt, but he was, you talk about the highs and lows, just the touchdown run that Philly had at the end of the first half. There was a screen he overran. Again, it's preseason, but it's also, again, important players play in the preseason, whether you know they're going to be important eventually or not. And they just need somebody here. So it's a tough, but I don't know. We'll see. I trust in their development there. Zach Cord did a really good job with this group, and he's a DC now, not the inside linebackers coach, but he'll have his fingerprints all over these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vrabel too, I guess, maybe a little bit. Last thing, what did you make of Baron Morton punting as much as he did last night, the third string rookie quarterback?
I mean, it's one of the things that makes the preseason, right? It's because they said the punter wasn't feeling well after in the first quarter, so they just had somebody else do it.
To read into this a little too much, I talked to Bryce Behringer after the game. I'm sure there was a parade of people that came by his locker, most of whom were not there. He and I chatted to the side probably more often than most media. I'm not keeping a score. The point is, I think I'd be in that outer circle of trust. Nothing there. Won't say if it's an injury or a cold. His nose was a little red, Dan. He sounded a little stuffy. I don't know. It was a beautiful night last night. There was a little bit of rain. Vrabel said he wasn't feeling well. I'm going to go a little bit maybe more illness. And then Vrabel said, I think to TV, we want to see in case of an emergency if Morton can do it. Well, Morton can only do that if he's on the roster and not if he's the emergency third quarterback, because you can only come on the field as the quarterback as the emergency to throw the ball, not to punt. So I think it was just a matter of all right, who can do this? And he did kick and punt in high school and all this stuff that people were finding out after the fact. I enjoyed it. I thought the PA announcer made a mistake when he first came out. No, I was wrong. Foolish of me. And I hope he does it in Cleveland, frankly. You know what, Bryce Behringer, find the old tricks that I was looking for in middle school to put I remember once a penny under your tongue when you would do the old thermometer. Did not work. To get out of school. Just keep 100-degree temperature for the next few days and let Baron Morton pump a little bit more, especially if we're not going to see much more of him this season.
Yeah, there you go. Have a little bit of fun with some of these games.
Yeah. All right. We know you are on Blue Sky. We know you are writing for FTN. We know you're an ambassador to Pro Football Reference, and we can follow you and your work and the newsletter. What have I missed? Tell the people where to find you and what you're up to next.
I'm gonna I think this week, I guess it'll probably be out Tuesday, but recording with Mina tomorrow to talk about some other things that are happening in the preseason. So I don't know if that's a podcast I really need to plug, but I'll be on it. So please listen. Having a little bump there would be nice. Anywhere you find Dan Pizzuta, I'm the only one. So it's very easy to find me on any type of social medias. I'll be there. Pizzuta.
I mean, it's a bummer that we start with Nick DeGennaro, whose nickname I'm just going to keep saying because it's probably my best work of the whole summer. All the tens of thousands of words I spilled on training camp, it's just one stupid nickname. Your nickname, I think, is, as far as I remember at those long nights at the Combine, it just ends up being Danny Pizza, courtesy of the Danny's at the Ringer Football Show. Anything else as a kid come up with a nickname?
No. The story was that it wasn't the Danny's. It was that was on my credential.
Oh, no way. What?
Yeah.
Oh, that shows you who had one too many beers those nights hearing that story.
Yeah.
It was me.
Yeah. Daniel Pizza was on my official Combine credential. It was that 2-3 years ago at this point. So it must have just been a typo that auto corrected when whoever at the 33rd team was putting in my credential. So yeah, Daniel Pizza was what was on my official credential as I was walking around Indianapolis all week.
So I just thought, because the smile on your face, I remember distinctly, was just I've heard this a million times. Yeah, I get it. So I thought it was just a bad joke that was just kind of your name starts.
Nope. That was, it was officially on the credential, and Heifetz and DK were the two who I think got the most enjoyment out of it and wanted to spread the word.
Do you still have the credential? I would maybe not frame that, but I would keep that.
I do. Yeah, I do have it.
Okay, good. Man, that I want a t-shirt, the McLovin driver's license that people wear across their chest.
Yeah.
I would love a Danny Pizza t-shirt.
Yeah, I am. I'm in a dynasty league with Danny Kelly, and he said the only way I could be in the league is if the team name was Daniel Pizza, and so it's been that for 3 years also.
Good man.
Yeah,
might see Danny Kelly. We might hear on the show out for the opener. Rumors of a live show at a Patriots bar in Seattle.
Ooh.
I don't know. We'll see. Stay tuned. A couple of teases. All right. I've taken up a lot of your time. I really appreciate you coming on. Always great talking ball with you. And look, man, Dan's dedicated. That man watched third quarter, fourth quarter preseason games. I'm not going to do the complaining bit about the job. We love what we have. We love what we get to do. I think the point is we're all ready for real football at this point because that's what we feel in late August. And we will have you back when the real football is played to talk about it and see where the Patriots are and our level of concern with all these positions. Thank you, man.
It sounds good. Always a pleasure.